Alright, in this video I'm going to demonstrate how to hook up an HPA FCU like the Wolverine FCU and the Star FCU to a box mag motor using the Bingo Airsoft Designs TCU circuit, or trigger control unit, also known as an MCU, as a motor control unit. But since it's hooked up to the trigger, so when you pull the trigger it winds the box mag, I call it the TCU. We'll start first by identifying two types of box mag motor configurations, and I'm going to use these motors here as an example. This motor has a battery attached to the motor with a little priming switch, so when you depress the switch it causes the motor to wind. So that's sort of a manual way of doing it, and it's activated by a switch. The second kind of box mag motor, like this one, has just a power lead going to it, or a power lead going to the box mag, and it's activated by power coming from the gun. So when you pull the trigger, it's effectively the same as plugging in a battery, and then you can actually see the motor wind. So again, the difference between these two is one has the battery with the box mag and it's activated by a switch. The other has the battery with the gun and power is sent to it when the trigger is pulled. Show it here again. Okay, so with these two types of configurations, the TCU circuit actually has two different modes. This is specially designed so it could work both as a power pass-through, which would be this kind of box mag motor, and a switching TCU, which would be this kind of box mag motor. So you can actually choose to use either format. I'm going to start by demonstrating how to use the power pass-through box mag motor and TCU circuit. So I'm going to set this circuit aside. I have two different circuits here. One is actually for the Wolverine FCU and one is for the Star FCU. So I'll also show both, but I'll start with the Star FCU. Alright, so this circuit actually has three leads attached to it. One lead, this lead here, attaches to the fusion engine in the little extra GPIO, or general purpose IO port on the FCU, and this connects right there. And if you look closely, there are two leads here. Actually, the wiring on this connector is reversed, but the lead here that is black is the positive output on this connector, and the lead here that is red is the ground. So on the TCU circuit, you'll see that the black actually goes to the positive point here and the red goes to the negative, but it doesn't really matter as long as the right polarity goes to the right connector or wire. Okay, so you plug this into the GPIO, and what will happen is when the trigger is pulled, the FCU will send +5 volts through this, which will then activate the TCU circuit to allow power to pass through onto the box mag. So I'm going to demonstrate this using two separate batteries, or you could use a Y adapter to have one battery power both. So I'll set that aside. But what I'm going to basically do here is plug in a battery into the FCU, so the FCU is powered. I'm going to plug a battery into the battery lead on the TCU, so the TCU now has power. It's this power that's going to get passed on to the box mag motor over here. So you can actually see the path through this. This battery will go through the circuit and power this box mag when the trigger is pulled on the FCU. So I have a little FCU circuit here, so I can pull the trigger and we can see if this actually works. I'll just hit the trigger on the circuit board, and every time you hit the circuit it causes the motor to wind. Okay, so when you set this up in your gun, you're essentially going to have this MCU circuit stored in the same location as the FCU. You can have one or two batteries. If you want to use just one battery, I'll demonstrate that here. You use the Y adapter that plugs into the FCU and also plugs into the TCU, and then you use just one battery on the side here. So one battery now powers both of these, and when you pull the trigger, it'll cause the box mag to wind. If you use two separate batteries, you can actually have different voltages. You can actually have an 11-1 battery, like this one, go to the box mag if you want to make the box mag spin faster. Let me set all these aside, and make this more clear here, and have a 7.4 go to the FCU. You don't want to send 11.1 to the FCU. So we're just going to have an 11.1 battery going to the box mag motor, 7.4 battery going to the FCU. If I pull the trigger, you'll notice the motor's spinning a lot faster. You'll also wear it out a little bit faster, but this allows you to use a different power source for the box mag versus the FCU. Alright, the Wolverine FCU also has a mag port on it, and this is a standard Wolverine FCU. It's these two connector points right here under the heat shrink. If you want to add it to your Wolverine FCU, you'll need to cut off this heat shrink and then solder on a connector right here. Or if you get the 249 version of the FCU, you can see that this connector is already attached. It's in these 2 points here. That's the positive on this side, it's the negative right there on these 2 points. And I'll have a picture in the video so you can get a close-up look of that. So I'm going to set the normal FCU aside and use the M249 FCU. And here is the TCU circuit wired up to work with the Wolverine FCU. The only real difference is the connector that's on here. Since this is using a standard JST connector, there's a matching JST connector on this side. So I'll connect this together to the I/O port, and then once again we have two battery ports here, one for the FCU and one for the TCU, so we'll pass the power through to the box mag. So I'm going to hook this up here with a separate battery to make it very obvious what's going to what. And now I'll plug in the motor into the output of the TCU, and here's a wire harness and a trigger board, and I'm just going to plug this into the FCU, and when I pull the trigger here, you can see that it activates the box mag motor. Okay, so that's how you set up the power pass-through on the TCU circuit. Battery going through the TCU over to your box mag, and the TCU is activated when you push the trigger via your FCU. Alright, when you're using the TCU in the switch configuration, there's only two connectors. One connector will go to the FCU, and the other connector works as a switch to your motor. But you do have to pay attention to the polarity. On the motor here, the white line is positive and the red line would be ground. So if you hooked a multi-tester up to this, you would see that this would be the positive line, this would be the negative one. And you want to make sure that the positive goes to the red on the switch connector and the negative goes to the black on the switch connector. So I'm going to just hook this up here and then hook this switch connector to the FCU. And you'll see that this battery now powers the motor via this switch, which turns it on and off. This TCU now acts as if it's just turning on and off this switch. So when I push the trigger here, you can see that the motor will wind. Now what will happen is if you have the polarity reversed on this switch connector, as soon as you plug it in, it would actually just start winding the motor. So you just have to reverse the polarity to make sure you have positive on this side, negative on the black line when it's in the switch configuration, and then it'll work just fine. These TCU circuits are available on my website. The link should be in the long description. You can get them in either switch configuration or power pass-through configuration for either the Wolverine FCU or the Polar Star FCU. These will come with heat shrink over them. I just leave them open so you can actually see the connections on them. And I also include a Y adapter so you can hook up one battery to both, plus extra connectors to hook up to your box mag. You'll have to just figure out where in your gun you want to run this line that goes out to your box mag and where you want to make that connection.